body when we ask the first question. I is one's position of view, or POV. The position of view, or POV, as described by the line hypothesis, is implemented by a fundamental property of nature called natural entanglement. This process produces the POV, which localizes you in space-time, whether you have 5, 1, 20, or no senses, regardless of what or where one's living form may be in this universe. Effectively, one's POV is the target for all of the sensory information we call experience. Any being's life ID is temporarily localized to its host body, complements of the naturally occurring entanglement between its physical host, such as one's cell or cells, together with a relativistically unconstrained form of matter called metamatter in Hilbert space. The POV of each living individual can be represented mathematically by its unique wave function. This wave function is a unique solution of state for the individual in space-time, and is the term missing from many of our quantum mechanical solutions. The POV is nothing less than the mathematical representation of a living being. In life, the POV brings no experience, but only that which may have an experience. In nature, a POV is the mathematical representation of a life ID, established either by entanglement of a single cell to metamatter, or alternatively by the heterodyning of multiple entanglement cells, or EC, to metamatter. If you are in fact alive, then your composite life ID and its position of view together constitute your being, regardless of your physical state, form, condition, or location in space-time. If the line hypothesis accurately depicts the reality in this universe and the entanglement molecule exists, then it represents the most fundamental physical component of life as we know it. Like the top quark or the Higgs, the ether or DNA, the entanglement molecule may someday be isolated and identified either in the cell or the environment, or not. Either way, we may learn something along the way. The historical nature of human understanding has never emerged from a lack of intellect, but from a deficit of information. So it should come as no great surprise if our ancestors' beliefs may not have been completely wrong, and science today may not be completely right. Instead, the reality we live and experience is a stunningly flexible and amazing hybrid implementation of nature, which ironically incorporates necessary elements of several schools of thought. This hybrid implementation makes life possible. It makes you possible, anywhere in existence. Such a truth would be embraced by few in their current instantiation, but would be embraced more readily by those same individuals in their future instantiations. Progress by reinstantiation, today we call it mortality, has been one of the primary vehicles of progress for humankind since the beginning of human history. So how might this work? Upon understanding this, we would have turned the page in the book of life that Darwin began. The eventual effect upon global enlightenment and religions everywhere would be profound. Imagine for the first time you could tell your young children generally, or eventually, specifically, how the life cycle works, minus the mysticism and ideology, because at that point it would just be science. Since ancient times, humankind has felt endeared by certain properties, skills, or talents observed in the living forms all around us. Properties which are misconstrued to be fundamental identifiers of life and of all living beings, properties such as mobility, voice, speech, sight, memory, and life as we know it. The reason Thomas Edison could so enthrall spectators with his newly designed speaking device, which he dubbed the phonograph, is due to humankind's hitherto ingrained, evolved or learned, and largely subconscious understanding that a voice, for example, is the sound of a living being's soul. Although consciously many people knew better, nevertheless it wasn't until they were able to actually witness the spectacle of a clearly inanimate device producing a voice did the rewiring of people's minds and the accompanying enlightenment take place. So it was with self-locomotion or mobility of inanimate objects, which also took some getting used to by our not-so-distant ancestors, as did light detection describable as sight. So too with the introduction of retrievable memory and such surprising spectacles exhibited by inanimate non-biological devices. Then there is life. Today we have a much more detailed description of biology and its chemistry than did our forebears. Nonetheless, we perhaps more than ever continue to see nature's implementation of life, as we did those other skills, as a feature indigenous to and expressible only by the biological forms we currently see around us. With the exception of life, it is only the encroachment of our synthetic, non-biological technologies upon these formerly cherished skills and talents that have helped us to see nature's true design. In so doing, we now realize that these functions are not exclusively properties of living beings or of biology, but rather examples of utilization and manipulation of more basic properties of nature, such as temperature and pressure, light, chemical, electromotive, and pondermotive forces, friction, entanglement, etc. However, where life is concerned, and taking no example from the past, we continue to cling to the misconception that life is not a skill or talent comparable to speech or memory, a property which similarly evolved here on Earth in biological form. Instead, we define life by the observed biology and chemistry of the forms we see around us. This is akin to defining speech, communication, memory, or vision by the description of your eyes, or larynx or neurons and their chemistry, or by the design of Edison's phonograph, or by the intricate electrical designs of the cell phone. Life, too, is an evolved capability with a natural implementation abstracted from any particular biology or chemistry we may see around us. In nature, life has a fundamental implementation based on natural entanglement via a molecule that may have existed in nature long before life emerged, a molecule, like so many others utilized by the cell to exceptional effect, the entanglement molecule. A molecule that may also be utilized in synthetic, perhaps non-biological forms to create an independent genesis of life. No matter how detailed or convincing the illusion of life may become in its implementation, for example in an android or computer or even in a biological entity, despite what your eyes may urge you to believe, each continues to be a non-living entity absent nature's fundamental mechanism of life. An essential mechanism provided via natural entanglement between the properly implemented entanglement molecules within living cells located in this space-time with metamatter in Hilbert space, which together produce each unique living individual's position of view, or POV, and life ID. This is the essential mechanism that permits any viable form to host an individual like yourself or your pet otter anywhere in this space-time. It is how you are, where you are, right now. It is the natural anti-entropic mechanism that permits any viable planet or species to host your life. By this hypothesized definition, even the most convincingly implemented appearance and behavior of an entity not naturally entangled in this way will continue to be an inanimate entity. In contrast, a handheld brick such as a calculator instantiated by natural entanglement to establish a POV, despite all appearances, this unconvincing brick would, in fact, be a living being. The day will shortly arrive when we are confronted, as we previously have been, with a new implementation of entities that meet all of the aesthetic and behavioral misconceptions we now harbor about life, or alternatively ones that show no traditional evidence of life whatsoever. Absent an understanding of the true determinant of life's natural entanglement, we will be ill-prepared to tell the difference. As objective as one may think one is, we are all perhaps unwilling victims of millennia of cultural indoctrination, religious or scientific. This leaves us either averse or susceptible to ideas that sound familiar to those teachings. As people of science, we are no doubt accustomed to the separation of concerns that has existed between science and religion for so long. This causes us to have a degree of tunnel vision against the possibility of overlap between nature and our various existential cultural narratives. However, nature reflects none of this avoidance. Nature is what it was long before humankind evolved the capacity to debate nature's design. It wasn't long ago that our physical form was the stuff of religion and mysticism, but now it is pure science. Shortly, the time will come when science will have to embrace the idea that being and individuality is a non-classical, form, biology, and chemistry-independent, mobile implementation of natural law in this universe. The most plausible reason one may feel that this topic is untenable is that one may have never considered how individuality and its mobility could be implemented in nature. It wouldn't be the first time, or the last, that humankind has been in the dark regarding the reality of our circumstances. There are many species and forms of life, and many planets and stars in this universe, any of which could host life. So the question becomes, what places you or any living being in their particular body on a particular planet? Further, is this process repeatable? This doesn't ask, is life repeatable, but rather, is individuality, you, repeatable? Before we consider its deeper mechanisms, let us first understand the principal claims of the line hypothesis. 1. You are not your body. The line hypothesis suggests that neither your biology nor any of its